Hi, my name is William Bbossa, and I'm a student at Aga Khan Academy, Mombasa, and I'm here to talk about my database for my ITGS internal assessment practice. So basically, my database is going to be based on general information about students within a school. So this is the general information that will be contained within my database. So it consists of 4 major tables, about 14 queries with 4 forms, 14 reports, and 1 macro and module to help out with the database. So I'm going to use one table to talk about the general skills that I used within the tables. So I'm going to use the mark information. So this is the general layout of one of the tables. So it has about 8 fields within it, and so just one moment. So these are the field names and the data types within the field. So my primary key within this database is this one, the student identification, and then it goes down to continue. It has a student surname with student surname, student first name, whether the student is male or female, the date of birth of the student, the average mark of the student predicted grade, and the subject identification. So basically, the student identification is obviously a number. I made it remain like that. The surname and the first name were short text because I didn't want any numeric values within these 2 fields. Whether the student is male, that's a yes or no question, because there are only 2 options for that. The student date of birth, of course, will be a data type, date and time, and then the 3 others are numbers, because first of all, the marks can only be numerical marks, and the subject identification, I wanted it to remain as a number as well. So some of the validation skills that I used within this table include the average marks. So I wanted to make sure that all the marks within this field were from 1 to 100, so that it's a percentage. So I made sure the validation rule was that all values should be less than 100. All values should be less than 100. And if this is so, all values, if the value that is inputted is more than 100, then the percentage, there'll be an error message that will be carried out saying the percentage that you've entered is invalid. The same thing for my predicted grades, because in IB you can only get a predicted score of 45 and below. So I did the same thing. If the value is greater than 45, then an error message would come out saying that this IB score that you've entered is invalid. So those are the basic validation skills that I used within my database, within the various tables, and they vary between the different tables that I created, but I just wanted to use this one to as a pilot program for the other tables that I created. So the next step I did was to create relationships between certain tables. So what I wanted to do was create a relationship, a one-to-many relationship, between the subject identification numbers on the subjects table and the subject identification number on the mark table. The reason for this is that when I wanted to create different queries based on this information, I wouldn't have been able to do so without this one-to-many link between the 2 tables. So what this relationship helped me do was create the various amount of queries right down here about the subject information for students. So now I'm going to go down to my various queries. So I created about 14 queries within my database, and I'm going to use one for the subjects and one for another query. So this is the look of one of the subject queries that I created. The view of it, as you can see, this is the linkage that we had made. This is the relationship that I had made previously. And what this did was it helped me to incorporate two tables to create one query. And this contained the subject identification, surname, first name, and subject ID from one table, and then the subject name from the other table called subjects that I created here. So that's my use of relationships within this database. So the next query that I was able to make was subject of most successful students. The query that showed the most successful students and the different subjects that they chose. So once again, the subject identification and the subject identification on these two tables, the linkage that I made played a big role in me creating this. So what I wanted to obtain is the most successful people and the subjects that they took. So I decided to incorporate these four main fields from the mark information table, and then these two fields from the subject tables. So the criteria that I use, and this is another skill that I was able to apply in queries, is that all values should have been greater than 75% for the average mark, and all predicted grades should be greater than 38 of an IB score for their IB scores. So basically what this does is this is a criteria to be able to filter out the information that you would not want. So rather than just presenting all the students, what this did was it was able to show me a list of the students who had marks greater than 75% and also predicted grades greater than 38. And what it also did was able to present the subject identification and the subject names from the table of called subjects. So I believe that this is another effective use of queries within my database to help things become a bit simpler. So the next step that I took was to create various reports for my database. So basically reports is a means of presenting the data that you have created or inputted in a cumulative manner. So I created reports for each of the tables and each of the queries, so that people would be able to view both all the subjects the students take, and then also their general information about school, whether it's their behavioral information, the extracurricular information, or their general subject mark information and subject information. This is the basic reports that I was able to create, and as you can see there are about 14 of them. So thereafter I wanted to make it easier for me to obtain open up these different reports, these various reports, or input information into the database. So what I did is I created various forms. Now these forms make it easier for one to input data into their database. So first of all, I made a switchboard. Now this switchboard allows you to open different forms. So I created two primary ones, but I could have created about 8 of them, although it would have been a very laborious process. But so I decided to create 2 to show you how to open other forms without going directly from the access objects. So what this does is this opens up the form to input the student extracurricular information. And so now I'm going to talk about this particular form. So now this particular form allows you to input new information about the student, and it also allows you to search for information about certain students. So this is where you input the different CASA identification numbers, and then it will be able to find the various people. I also tried to make the form look a bit customized, make it a bit beautiful. So I was able to fill in the different shapes, make the search button look a bit unique from the other boxes, and also I incorporated an image of the school logo for the Aga Khan Academy. Another skill that I was able to apply was the ability to change the age, going up and down using these two arrow keys. I believe that was another means of skill application within my database. And generally, I believe that I was able to create an effective database in order to show various information. I also created a macro. Now, what this macro does is it opens up the information about the honor student. Now, if I am able to just open it, one moment. If I'm able to run this macro, what it does, it opens the form for the student information. That's exactly what I wanted the macro to do. So if I click on the macro, what it does is it opens the student information form, which now is available for you to now start inputting data. So it's an easier way. I was able to code it to allow you to input new information about a student, whether the student is new to the school or whether the student didn't have a database before and need one now. This macro helps you open up one of these forms to be able to input that information comprehensively. And generally, I was able to apply as many skills as I could to create an effective database that could be applied within our school system. And yes, I believe that it was a very successful database, and I hope that you've enjoyed seeing the various skills that I was able to apply here. Thank you very much.